Part 21. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 201. Fire, beat the Hummer hard, don't let anyone go. As the Allied tanks rolled over, Wang Ling became crazy and shouted hysterically. And as his shouts fell, every member of the Wolf team showed their ultimate combat effectiveness in an instant. All the mobilization soldiers picked up their submachine guns and fired like crazy. Any approaching Allied tanks they were all targeted, and their progress was forcibly interrupted, forcing them to stop and fight with the Wolf team. Taking advantage of this convenience, the two big killers, the Apocalypse tank of the Samsung Elite also launched the Harvest mode. All the tanks rushing towards them could not withstand their bombardment. Each time they fired 4 explosive shells, they would definitely be destroyed. An Allied tank was blown up. The powerful combat power and exploding shells were terrifying to see. Not only these two, but also the ungraded Apocalypse tank has begun to show its prominence. Although its firepower is far inferior to that of the Samsung, the destructive power of the shells it fires is equally threatening to the Allied tanks. Even a full-blooded Grizzly tank cannot withstand 2 rounds of artillery fire. In addition, the 5 Rhino tanks are also worth noting. Under the concentrated fire, all the Allied tanks that were targeted were unable to resist. 2 of the 3-star elites were also firing explosive shells all the time, harvesting Allied tanks to their heart's content. The tanks of the Wolf Squad are very strong, but the soldiers are also not bad. Although the firepower of individual conscripts is very poor, when there are more people and the firepower is gathered together, it is a qualitative change, and there are also a large number of 3-star elites among them. The health bar above the head of any Allied tank that was targeted by fire was rapidly declining at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even the Grizzly tank could not last more than 2 breaths before being destroyed. The Phantom tanks and multifunctional infantry vehicles were even worse. They were targeted by concentrated fire and were killed almost instantly. As the captain of the Wolf Squad, Wang Ling's firepower here is not as good as the concentrated firepower of Samsung Apocalypse and the large army, but it should not be underestimated. The range of the battery is so wide that even the tanks of the Allied forces can eat enough. Every time it was launched, a full 5 tanks would be enveloped, damaged very quickly, and their health would be reduced. Then they would fall under the fire coverage of the mobilization group, and it would be even harder to hold on, and they would simply explode. Naturally, these combined tanks fought back, and the Wolf Squad also suffered some damage. Although the Grizzly tanks were no match for the Apocalypse tanks in a duel, their numbers were large enough, and there would often be 2 or 3 Grizzly tanks targeting them collectively. The situation with the Apocalypse tank. The armor and health of multifunctional infantry vehicles are really fragile. Not to mention coalition tanks, even conscript groups can easily kill them. However, almost all of these infantry vehicles will fire a missile before exploding, hitting the infantry group. The most serious damage was caused by the Phantom tank. After the tank stopped, it transformed into the shape of a big tree. Every time it changed, it would fire a powerful shell. The tank would lose a lot of health when it came into contact. Ordinary infantrymen would even be hit. Killed immediately, the whole body was ignited with raging fire, wiping out its vitality. But after all, they are charging. The psychedelic method of the Phantom tank is not very effective for the Wolf Squad. Even after suffering several hidden losses, all the infantry are intentionally or unintentionally targeting all the approaching Phantom tanks. That powerful firepower suppressed it in an instant. Rumble. Rumble. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. The battle broke out very fiercely, and both sides were already furious. The continuous sound of artillery and submachine guns could be heard, almost covering up all the sounds in the whole world, which was very frightening. This battle started very quickly. It could be said that the two sides just came into contact and broke out in an instant. But it ended not too slowly. Although the Wolf Squad also suffered casualties, under its powerful firepower, the Allied tank group was under an absolute headwind from beginning to end, and all the tanks were unable to do anything. If you show too much resistance, you will be beaten. As a result, the assembled army of more than 30 tanks of various types exploded one after another at an exaggerated speed, and were eventually annihilated. This torrent of steel still failed to break through the blockade of the Wolf Squad. However, this kind of fierce battle will not be too easy for the Wolf team itself. In this round of blocking battle, both 3-star Apocalypse were knocked out about a quarter of their health, and the other Apocalypse was knocked out by 3 points. About 2 seconds later, the blood bar on the top of his head was about to turn red. One of the 5 Rhino tanks was destroyed, and the health of the remaining 4 was not very healthy, and one of them was even red. As for the soldiers of the Wolf Squad, Wang Ling looked back and found that according to rough statistics, about 10 people died in the battle. Most of them were killed by the Phantom tank. Among the remaining soldiers, there were nearly 20 soldiers with varying degrees of injuries. On the other hand, those anti-aircraft tracked vehicles were thieves enough and hid relatively far away. Although their lethality against tanks was really limited, fortunately they themselves were not targeted and remained intact. With the strength of a small team, independently annihilating such a torrent of steel, the damage to his body should have been minor, but Wang Ling still felt a little distressed when he saw it. As a result, many 3-star elites have been created. Many soldiers in the team are shining with light, which indicates that they will successfully advance to the 3-star elites. Even the tanks have benefited. The originally ungraded Apocalypse tank has been successfully promoted to 1-star veteran, and the Rhino tank has also gained 2 more veteran grades. Overall, this battle had both gains and losses for the Wolf team. After Wang Ling looked at it, he sighed and had no choice but to cast his gaze into the distance again. The blocking battle is not over yet. The reinforcements from the 3 bases are far more than that. At this time, the quartet troops that were attacking the Orange Allied base had also begun to show their might. The tactics that Chen Tong learned from Wang Ling were indeed effective. A modern military base cannot be separated from the support of electricity. As a result, after the quartet troops sent troops to bulldoze all the nearby power plants, the entire Orange Allied base was instantly shut down. When the power hit, all the light prism towers stopped rotating, the spy satellites stopped operating, and the giant cannons that had caused heavy losses to the troops in all directions finally stopped and could no longer fire any shells. At the same time, the crack generator in the base also lost its effectiveness, and the dark area originally shrouded in the electronic map was also explored. Looking at the electronic map, we can see that the interior of this Allied base seems a bit empty due to the large number of reinforcements that were dispatched before. The remaining troops are still gathering urgently, and they seem to want to make a final resistance. There are a lot of light prism towers in this base, but after losing power, they all became decorations, not even as powerful as machine gun bunkers. However, these machine gun bunkers, coupled with the remaining troops, were obviously unable to resist the joint attack of the 4 coalition forces. The current state of this orange base can be said to be that of a strong one, but a strong one. As long as Wang Ling's Wolf Squad can successfully block all the reinforcements, the defeat of this base is now certain. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 202. Don't relax, increase your firepower, and level this base as soon as possible. This Orange Allied base itself has insufficient internal defense power due to the large number of reinforcements going out. Now, the power supply has been cut off by the forces from all directions. If nothing else, this base has no hope of survival. However, the lion is fighting the rabbit with all his strength, not to mention that this base is not a good one at the moment. If the wolf team hadn't blocked the reinforcements, their situation would not have been so smooth. Under this situation, Chen Tong did not dare to be careless at all. He waved his hand and shouted, urging the large troops to resolve the battle as soon as possible. After all, he didn't know to what extent the Wolf Squad could resist those large reinforcements. Once the Wolf Squad fell, their troops from all directions would also be attacked from the front and rear by the Allied forces. That kind of scene must never happen. After hearing this, the soldiers who were already full of fighting spirit roared again, and then opened fire with all their might. This Allied base, which was already lacking in strength, was even more weathered. All buildings, such as machine gun bunkers, prism towers, power plants, maintenance factories, or refineries, etc., that were within the firepower range of the troops from all directions were pushed sideways. The situation was simply devastating. During this period, they naturally encountered resistance from troops within the Allied forces, but the number of these defensive troops was far inferior to that of the troops from all directions. They pushed all the way, and all the resisting troops were annihilated. It was so ferocious. At this rate, it shouldn't take too long to level this base. However, even if this large Allied force is temporarily transferred away, there are still some remaining defensive forces that will cause headaches and irritations to all the troops on all sides. Just as the troops from all directions were wreaking havoc and wanted to end the battle as soon as possible, on one side of the team, the Firefox team led by Dongming suddenly heard the sound of two submachine guns that were completely different from the Babisha submachine guns. The gunshots were very rapid and frequent, and every time the gunfire sounded, there would be one or even several screams. Each scream seemed to herald the sacrifice of a mobilized soldier. In a very short period of time, nearly 20 mobilization soldiers died. And this even includes Dongming, the captain. As for the person who fired the shot, it turned out to be two SEALs on guard. This type of unit has the absolute power to instantly kill ground infantry. Now they are sticking to one side, and all coalition soldiers who enter their range will be harvested by them. With the momentum of the troops from all directions, it was already a certainty that the base would be overthrown. As the captain, Dongming did not hide behind the team and led the team to fight at the forefront. However, even he did not expect that the Allied forces would. There is still such combat power in the base, and all the infantry have no resistance at all under its guns. Unexpectedly, this one killed him directly, and he was filled with hatred on this battlefield. Old Dong. Although the troops from all four parties stretched the battle line in order to end the battle as soon as possible, and the teams were separated by a long distance, they were all looking after each other. The situation within the Firefox team was naturally known to the other three teams. A touch of shock immediately appeared on the faces of Tong and Huben, while Sun Chiming's eyes suddenly burst open. This shout was almost hysterical. Although Dongming likes to ridicule Sun Chiming on many things, this actually shows that the relationship between the two is extraordinary and they are the closest comrades in arms. However, now that comrade was shot and killed by the enemy in front of him, could he bear it? Ah! You are looking for death. Under this stimulation, Sun Chiming seemed to be crazy. He was about to rush over with a submachine gun and fight the SEALs desperately. But Chen Tong was startled and shouted quickly, "You are looking for death. If you want to avenge him, don't go there. Where are the anti-aircraft crawlers? Where are they? Get over here and kill those two bastards, got it?" Although Sun Chiming looked crazy now, he did not lose his mind after all. After hearing Chen Tong's shouts, he finally stopped, but his clenched teeth and clenched fists also indicated what was going on in his heart. The anger is boiling. Under Chen Tong's shout, on one side of the team, the three anti-aircraft crawler vehicles that were originally dismantling the ore refinery with the large troops immediately broke away from the front line, drove quickly, and finally broke into the place. The two SEALs were within firing range and fired artillery shells together. Although the SEALs have the power to instantly kill infantry, they are basically unable to defeat tanks. In addition, anti-aircraft tracked vehicles are killers of ordinary infantry. Although the SEALs also counterattack, they can't do anything about the tracked vehicles. At this time, the two SEALs could not hold on for more than 2 breaths, and were easily knocked out by the anti-aircraft crawler vehicles. After the enemy troops were wiped out, Chen Tong finally breathed a sigh of relief. Although he has been on the battlefield for a long time, Chen Tong is still a bit unfamiliar with the SEALs. After all, not everyone can experience the game repeatedly as a player and understand the characteristics of all the units. This targeted approach was what he heard from Wang Ling when he visited Wang Ling. At that time, Wang Ling could be said to have told Chen Tong all the conceivable allied military units, including the SEALs. The master still has a hand in teaching his disciples, but now that we are on the battlefield, it is no longer a matter of master and apprentice. As the Eagle squad becomes stronger, the threat to the enemy will increase, and the pressure on the Wolf squad will also be reduced a lot. As far as Wang Ling is concerned, there is no loss. In order to win the war, it can be said that he basically did not have many reservations. Chen Tong was also secretly grateful for the achievements of such a conflicting fighting style. Fortunately, he had put down his identity and visited Wang Ling. Otherwise, the current situation would have caused huge losses to the troops from all directions. When the SEALs were annihilated, the nearby infantrymen who might be shot at any time finally breathed a sigh of relief, and Sun Chiming temporarily got out of that crazy state and hurriedly rushed to Dongming's body. After all, Dongming was just an ordinary program and did not receive the treatment of a fifth instructor. The system did not leave his body behind. After his death in battle, his body has been gradually disappearing until now. But seeing his former comrades end up like this, Sun Chiming, who had just recovered, became crazy again. A wave of pain and anger surged into his heart, and he howled one after another. It seemed that only in this way could he relieve some inner sorrow and anger. When the others heard the voice and saw Sun Chiming's current state, they all pursed their lips, with a look of discomfort in their eyes. They also felt the same feeling of sadness and anger. After howling several times in a row, Sun Chiming finally stopped. At this time, Dongming's body had completely disappeared. Sun Chiming then stood up slowly. His body was shaking slightly because he was so excited. He almost gritted his steel teeth, and then shouted hysterically, "Kill! Kill! Kill everyone in this entire base, allied bastards, I'll kill them all. Not even a scrap of any building will be left to me, they'll all be blown up." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 203. This shout, filled with grief and anger, almost exhausted all of Sun Chiming's energy. A person like Sun Chiming, who has served as the captain of a small team for a long time on the battlefield, has long developed his voice. It can be said that those veteran captains all have loud voices. However, after this shout, Sun Chiming's voice became hoarse instantly. You can imagine how loud this hysterical shout was. When the surrounding soldiers heard this, their scalps suddenly felt numb, their blood seemed to be boiling, and their eyes were filled with bloodshot eyes. Sun Chiming's shout was like giving them a shot of stimulant. However, unlike stimulants, this group of people is not excited, but excited, a strong emotion that arises from rising anger. Driven by this emotion, these soldiers seemed to be hypnotized, as if they had forcibly raised their combat effectiveness to a higher level. After a deafening roar, the firepower that broke out was simply frightening. Everyone shot like a madman. They stood up, completely regardless of their own safety, as long as they could annihilate the enemy, even if it meant exchanging their lives, they would not hesitate. This crazy fighting style made the remaining troops in this allied base feel horrified. They were already weak and on the verge of destruction, and now they encountered these madmen. There was no way to survive at all. Even their confidence in counterattack was destroyed. This group of madman-like troops swept past, and all resistance was the army was instantly defeated. There are two types of troops, which form an interesting contrast. One is that once a soldier in the team is killed, everyone else will be frightened, and it is difficult to make an effective counterattack under the fear of death. The other is that once a comrade in the team is killed, the entire team will be frightened. The team will go crazy, charge without fear of death, and avenge their comrades no matter the cost. The disparity in combat effectiveness between these two teams can be imagined. Although this Red Alert world is just a program created by Uncle Hay, everyone in it has independent thinking, but their performance varies under the difficulty control. Normally, the death of ordinary conscripts in battle would not arouse such emotions, but Dongming was not in this category. Seeing his old comrades die in front of his eyes, Sun Chiming finally unleashed this hatred. Came out, and then radiated to the entire Hound team and Firefox team, and then the current scene happened. Looking at this group of crazy-looking soldiers, even Chen Tong felt horrified, but he had an unwillingness to admit defeat in his heart. His eyes condensed and he waved his hand. Members of the Eagle Squadron, listen, don't lose to them, everyone will fight me hard. Even Hu Ben was deeply touched, with some fire in his eyes. Brothers, take a good look at these comrades around you. If you don't want this to be your last look, then fight me with all your life. Only by annihilating all the enemies, we can survive. Roar! Roar! The members of the two teams were gradually affected. After two roars in succession, they all assumed a life-threatening posture. This Allied base, which was already in a precarious state, is now even worse. The two SEALs probably didn't expect that after killing one of the captains, they completely angered the entire quartet of troops and intensified the destruction of the entire base. As the crisis in the Orange Allied base became more and more intense, even reaching the edge of destruction, the requests for help from the other two Allied bases in its command post became more frequent and urgent. With this urgent request for help, the Allied forces finally changed from the previous chaotic state. In the Blue Allied base, the two blocked paths were finally forcibly opened, and the three Allied forces blocked inside were finally opened. The large army finally found a way and broke out of the Blue base. But this is far from over. The orders given from above are becoming more and more urgent, almost a death order. This makes all the Allied reinforcements aware of the seriousness of the situation. At present, all the rescue forces are rushing towards the Orange Allied Forces base. The direction started to run wildly. After all, after the Orange Allied base was wiped out, there were only two Allied bases left on the battlefield. No matter how strong they had no confidence that they could be stronger than the coalition forces that combined the four Allied bases. Line up. Before them, although there were many Allied reinforcements rushing out from the main road, they were only part of the reinforcement lineup after all. But now, all the reinforcements are rushing out from several intersections. As shown on the electronic map, it emits a lot of light spots and looks really spectacular. However, Wang Ling's eyes felt a little numb when this kind of magnificence fell on him. With so many reinforcements coming, can the Wolf Squad take them all? But as soon as the Stout emerged, Wang Ling forcibly erased it. The crazier the enemy was, the more necessary it was to block it. From the observation on the map, the Orange Allied base has declined and is crumbling. As long as it can block these reinforcements, the overall situation on this battlefield can basically be said to be stable. Thinking of this, Wang Ling took a deep breath and also shouted, "Brothers, the Allies have gone crazy. What we have to do is to be even crazier than them. Once we can't hold on, the entire four teams of comrades they will all be destroyed. Therefore, when the soldiers come, they will block the water and the earth, and all the Allied reinforcements who come will be brought down by me. No one is allowed to be left, even if it costs their lives." Roar. After fighting until now, Wang Ling has become a veteran on the battlefield. If mobilized before the war, he will be no worse than other veteran captains. After the mobilization, all members of the Wolf team let out a deafening roar, even though the surface of the tank also seemed to be slightly glowing with fiery red, and it seemed that it was brewing a terrible attack. After the whole team's fighting spirit became fierce, the Allied reinforcements closest to them finally came closer. These reinforcements were the large forces of Allied soldiers that had rushed out from the main road. There were even a small number of tanks mixed in. It was difficult to break out among the soldiers, so they simply moved with the army. The number of these reinforcements is quite large, even no less than 100. Coupled with the support of the tanks, the lineup is quite terrifying. The torrent is coming, and they want to break through the blockade of the Wolf squad. But what responded to them was the electromagnetic current attack launched from a distance by Wang Ling. 8 soldiers plus a grizzly tank were all enveloped and lost a lot of blood. But even so, this group of reinforcements charged like crazy. Finally, after killing this round of infantry, they rushed to the Wolf team. Fire! Beat! At this time, the members of the Wolf squad, who had been waiting for a long time, also opened fire, and the Allied reinforcements also counterattacked. The battle between the two sides had just begun, and it was in a fierce state. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 204. Boom boom. Boom boom. Ta-da-da ta-da-da. The flames of war spread, and the fierce vibrations seemed to affect the entire battlefield. The deafening explosions resounded throughout the entire world. The densely packed fire snakes even brought up handfuls of hot blood. This battlefield has completely heated up. As for the Allies, as the Orange Allied base was on the verge of destruction, the increasingly urgent calls for help challenged the Allies' nerves as much as possible. All the reinforcements were charging like crazy. But it happened that the Wolf squad was standing in their way, refusing to give in at all. The two sides could not fight to the death. Okay. The increasingly urgent military orders also made these reinforcements red-eyed. After being blocked, they naturally had to fight back desperately, trying to break the siege of the Wolf team and rescue the Orange Allied base as soon as possible. The powerful under the burst of firepower, the Wolf squad suffered casualties at all times. However, they are crazy and ruthless, but the Wolf squad is even more ruthless and crazier here. The electromagnetic device in Wang Ling's hand was operating at high load almost all the time, continuously emitting electromagnetic currents with a huge electrical range, often causing a large number of Allied troops to suffer. Those Apocalypse tanks were also tilting their shells outward desperately. All the Allied soldiers who were close to its range could not hold on for a moment and were killed by the strafing bombardment. Even the tanks could not withstand it at all. We cannot survive a bombing of this scale. The Rhino tank also spared no effort in blasting, and the explosive shells of the 3-star elite also had the power to instantly kill the infantry. Naturally, the 3 Samsung anti-aircraft tracked vehicles that had been hiding aside also encountered suitable enemies. They moved to the front again, hid behind the Rhino tank, and fired out shells like flowing water. The sputtering damage was also rapid, destroying a large number of enemy troops. Even the 2 anti-aircraft infantry were effective in this situation. Many Allied soldiers died tragically under the continuous shelling. As for the army of mobilization troops, they launched an even fiercer attack. The blazing fire snakes poured almost overwhelmingly towards the Allied forces. With their numerous 3-star elites, their firepower was so fierce that they were no less powerful than those still in numbers. Allied reinforcements on board. It is true that after nearly a month of defense, some 3-star elite soldiers were also produced in the Allied forces. Mixed in with these reinforcements, they were full of firepower. However, their number was far inferior to that of the Wolf squad, which had been fighting continuously. Coupled with its many powerful tanks and a perverted captain, this wave of Allied forces only lasted a short time. Completely at a disadvantage, they were gradually crushed by the Wolf Squad, and finally the reinforcements were wiped out at the cost of more than 10 soldiers dying in battle. After this battle, many conscripts in the Wolf Squad had smoke slowly coming out of their guns. Even the barrels of the Apocalypse tank and the Rhino tank were filled with smoke. One can imagine the firefight just now. How hard these tanks and infantry work. There is no way, the current Allied reinforcements are really a little crazy, and the Wolf team feels a little troublesome. But as the old saying goes, the crazier the enemy is, the more necessary it is to block the attack. From the electronic map, we can see that the Quartet's troops have become more and more successful in the attack, and the Orange Allied base has no power to resist. Is being rapidly encroached and destroyed by troops from all directions. However, the area of the base is too big after all, and it will take a lot of time to level it all. During this period of time, the mission of the Wolf team was even more dangerous than theirs. After all, there were too many reinforcement teams behind them, who were desperately trying to come to their aid. These reinforcements all have powerful counter-attack capabilities. However, Wang Ling gritted his teeth and showed no intention of retreating. The electromagnetic device on his hand seemed to be thinking about releasing a powerful electromagnetic current again. After this short rest and waiting, another wave of Allied reinforcements finally arrived from the rear. As the Orange Allied forces base is in crisis, these reinforcements are also a little panicked and anxious, and the lineup is not uniform. There are only a small number of Phantom tanks and a small number of Grizzly tanks in this wave of reinforcements. The total number is only a dozen or so. Charging in rampantly, completely unable to pose much of a threat to the Wolf Squad. Hit me. Following Wang Ling's order, a one-sided crushing battle began again. The scale of this battlefield is indeed far from the previous one. The number of teams stationed in those Allied bases is really huge. After the previous transfer of the Tigers away from the mountains, more than half of the teams in the 3 Allied bases were originally concentrated in the blue in the Allied base. After learning that they had been tricked, they all mobilized to rescue the Orange Allied base. This combined number is quite huge, almost exceeding the total number of teams in the 2 Allied bases. But in the face of these reinforcements, the Wolf Squad still gritted its teeth and refused to give in. Over the next long period of time, the Wolf Squad blocked too many Allied reinforcements, wave after wave, including large armies of various tanks, infantry groups, and even infantry and tanks. The mixed lineup, after battle, can be said to have demoralized the Allies. There are so many of these reinforcements that if they are gathered together to launch an attack, not even the Wolf Squad can stop them. But no matter what, these reinforcements had gone crazy because of the crisis at the Orange Allied base, and could not be assembled to attack. At best, they could only form temporary teams. As a result, Calabash Baby saved Grandpa. This team fought alone and was no match for the Wolf Squad. It lasted for such a long time. Not only did they fail to break through the Wolf Squad's defense line, but the number of reinforcements even dropped sharply. 70 to 80% of the troops were gone, and only the slower moving troops in the rear were still on the attack. Naturally, the Wolf Squad itself was not feeling well after so many Allied troops were wiped out in successive battles. The number of soldiers in the team was reduced sharply to only about 40 people. Rhino tanks and anti-aircraft crawlers were also destroyed. Each of them blew up one, and one of the anti-aircraft infantrymen was lost. In addition to Wang Ling, one of the magnetic blast infantrymen was also killed. This loss is indeed too heavy for the Wolf team. However, after successive battles, the improvement effect of this loss feedback is really eye-catching. With the big waves washed away, all the remaining members of the Wolf team, except for some very few seriously injured ones, have been promoted to the 3-star elite level, including Apocalypse tanks, Rhino tanks, anti-aircraft infantry, and magnetic blast infantry have all been improved and promoted to 1-star veterans. Although they have lost too many people, they have added so many elites. The firepower of the wolf team is actually stronger than before. I went out running for a day and didn't do anything. I didn't write a word. I'm still very sleepy. However, I can't rest and I have to work overtime. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 205. Hoo. After the successive battles, Wang Ling also lost too much energy and physical strength. Even his body after intermediate strengthening now feels a little tired. Even when he was fighting the enemy before, even he himself suffered 2 missile attacks from a multifunctional infantry vehicle. However, the infantry vehicle's 2 missiles couldn't even be eliminated by an ordinary recruit, let alone Wang Ling. Now, the surface of Wang Ling's body was also injured due to the missile attack. The uniform on his chest and arms was slightly damaged, and the charred injuries could be seen from them. But this kind of injury is not considered a serious injury to Wang Ling, and even his strengthened body is already healing on its own. Taking advantage of the gap when the next wave of Allied troops failed to arrive in time, Wang Ling took a breath. After taking a short rest, he looked back at the wolf team. Even he felt tired after being strengthened at the intermediate level, let alone others. Now all the infantry were breathing exaggeratedly, and the continuous battles also made them exhausted. However, even though his body was exhausted, Wang Ling still saw unprecedented fortitude and extremely fiery fighting spirit in their eyes, as if the enemy would not flinch even if the enemy's sword was clamped on their necks. Change. When Wang Ling saw this fighting spirit, he nodded with great satisfaction. Wolf Squad, you deserve the name. However, Wang Ling felt very distressed when he saw the large-scale losses of his subordinates. Those were all his loyal subordinates. Not only those comrades who died in battle, but also those who survived on the battlefield. Few had healthy blood levels on their heads, and there were even many seriously wounded. Even those tanks no longer have full health. Relying on the recovery ability of the 3-star elites, they can naturally recover if given a certain amount of time, but that will also take time. Although so many 3-star elites have been promoted, the Wolf Squad as a whole is better than before, but the injuries of these soldiers cannot be ignored. Although the number of Allied reinforcements has been less than 30%, Wang Ling can also imagine the upcoming blocking battle. Perhaps a bit more dangerous than the previous ones. What's more, every time one of these elites is lost, Wang Ling will feel pain for a long time. If possible, Wang Ling doesn't want any of them to die. However, being on the battlefield and starting a war, this idea is obviously a bit naive. Thinking of this, Wang Ling shook his head helplessly, turned around, and continued to look into the distance of the battlefield. There, the only remaining Allied reinforcements were getting closer and closer to them. What rushed forward was a large army composed of a group of soldiers and grizzly tanks. They were mixed together and had a strong momentum, but overall they looked very scattered. In the previous blocking battle, there were many waves of Allied reinforcements who died under the fire of the Wolf Squad, but their strength was still higher than this group of reinforcements. Now looking at these reinforcements approaching, even though the number of the Wolf Squad has dropped sharply, they have no fear at all. After it approached, Wang Ling twisted his neck, made a thumping sound, and shouted, "Brothers, here we go again." The number of these reinforcements has also dropped sharply, and only the last 2 waves are left. Work hard and eat them. Roar. And those members of the Wolf Squad, even though they were exhausted now, still broke out with deafening roars. The sound was so loud that it was even louder than the Wolf Squad in its heyday. This cruel war caused the sacrifice of a large number of members of the Wolf Squad, but they also promoted many 3-star elites. After repeated training, they finally became a formidable Steel Division. The Steel Division, the Steel-like Army, and the Steel-like will have created this solid defense line that cannot be broken no matter how the enemy attacks. And the current wave of Allied reinforcements is obviously not enough to tear it apart. When these reinforcements rushed to Wang Ling's range, Wang Ling said nothing, and a powerful electromagnetic current burst out instantly, covering a large area of Allied troops. In these successive blocking battles, the number of Allied troops who died under Wang Ling's electric shock was already a very huge number. Now, these numbers continue to increase. For this discharge action, Wang Ling has almost reached the level of instinct, and its frequency even vaguely surpasses that of the 7-star ace. The large number of enemy troops were also hit, and their health bars dropped rapidly. Not long after, 6 of them an Allied soldier was directly electrocuted to death, leaving only 2 grizzly tanks still holding on, but both of them had reduced health. Taking advantage of this time, this wave of reinforcements finally charged in front of the Wolf Squad, and a big battle broke out again. Although many members of the current Wolf Squad had insufficient health and even had many seriously injured persons, their firepower was even stronger than before. The entire reinforcements were completely wiped out before they could hold on for long. As a result, only the last wave of Allied reinforcements remained on the entire battlefield. But it was this last wave that made Wang Ling feel strongly troubled. This last wave of teams includes too many types of tanks. The number is so dramatic that it is even more than the previous waves combined. The most difficult battle is still here. Although the Wolf Squad is not afraid of its lineup, but in a fierce fight, with the current state of the Wolf Squad, Wang Ling does not know how many people will die in the battle. Thinking of the consequences, Wang Ling felt heavy in his heart. However, just when Wang Ling was feeling a little distressed, he suddenly noticed something abnormal. Subconsciously, the 7-star A symbol above his head was flashing faintly. This is. Observing this situation, Wang Ling was stunned for a moment, and then showed an expression of ecstasy. The troop level flashes, which symbolizes the change in level. Now Wang Ling is already a 7-star ace, and if he gets promoted higher, he will be a 10-star soldier king, the highest level exclusive to Wang Ling in the Red Alert world. Sure enough, the 7-star A symbol flashed for a short time, and a few more were conveniently added to it, reaching the 10-star soldier king level of the magnetic blast infantry. Buzz. In this world, the improvement in level brings a huge change in the combat power of the body, let alone the 10-star soldier king. After reaching this level, a large amount of information came out of Wang Ling's mind instantly, and various pictures flashed through his mind. At this moment, Wang Ling seemed to have received several military experience books one after another. In the same way, it seems that he has gone through countless devil trainings in his mind, raising his combat experience in the magnetic explosive infantry unit to the highest possible level. Although Wang Ling had experienced the infusion of experience from the 10-star soldier king when mobilizing troops, that unit was too basic after all and was far less informative than the current one. To instill such a huge amount of information in one go would be difficult for Wang Ling. My brain is a little groggy. However, this feeling did not last long. Wang Ling was stimulated by another change and forcibly cheered up. Because the strengthening of the 10-star soldier queen's weapons and body has also begun, and the gifts given by the system to the 10-star soldier king will also be added to Wang Ling at the same moment. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 206. Wang Ling is particularly looking forward to this enhancement and gift. It is true that in reality, in the ivory tower of the university, Wang Ling did not encounter many storms. He mainly focused on the turbulent world of Red Alert, using the convenience of his player's status to strengthen himself as much as possible. However, the emergence of this extra-dimensional system is ultimately to assist Wang Ling in reality, feeding back all the enhancements in the Red Alert world into his body in the real world, similar to deep hypnosis. Among these enhancements and feedbacks, in addition to the enhancement of physical fitness at each stage, What Wang Ling is most looking forward to is the enhancement of the 10-star soldier king of various arms. After all, the various types of soldiers in Red Alert have various abilities and weapons. The strengthening of the 10-star soldier king will also feed back all these abilities and weapons to the real Wang Ling. Although Wang Ling has no use for these abilities at this stage, Wang Ling is certainly happy to receive such a gift. Only. Ahis. This process was more painful than Wang Ling imagined. The strengthening of the king of soldiers, whether it was weapon strengthening or body strengthening, seemed to be all concentrated on his right hand. At this moment, Wang Ling felt as if something was coming. It was like something was tearing apart the bones of his hand, and the severe pain made Wang Ling couldn't help but cry out in pain. It's not like Wang Ling has never experienced the enhancement of the King of Soldiers level, but the enhancement of the King of Soldiers is not so painful. Why is the enhancement of the King of Magnetic Infantry Soldiers so painful? This question came to Wang Ling's mind, and it even made Wang Ling wonder if there was something wrong here. However, he was not allowed to think too much. The pain caused by the strengthening had become more and more intensified, as if the bones of his right hand were cracking inch by inch. Due to the intense pain, Wang Ling screamed. At the same time, his facial expressions were slightly distorted, giving him a crazy look. Team leader. What's wrong, Captain? Captain, are you injured too? Wang Ling's screams were naturally heard by the members of the wolf team. They all became nervous and started asking questions. Even when faced with the impact of the Allied forces, this group of people never looked so nervous. After all, Wang Ling has a very tall image in their eyes. He seems to be able to handle almost any difficulties calmly. This is the first time they have heard the painful screams from Wang Ling like this. Doesn't it make them nervous? The wolf squad is very strong, and Wang Ling, the captain of it, is like Optimus Prime, supporting everyone's belief. Once something happens to Wang Ling, the wolf squad's momentum will drop in an instant. As for Wang Ling, although he was being tortured mercilessly by the pain coming from his right hand, he himself did not lose his mind. In spite of the pain, he even waved to the subordinates with his left hand to signal them not to worry too much. After barely appeasing the group of subordinates, Wang Ling focused all his attention on his right hand. The sudden pain caused by this Soldier King level enhancement indeed caused Wang Ling, who was unprepared, to suffer for a while, but after all, Wang Ling had already experienced the primary and intermediate enhancements of his body. That kind of pain, but it is far from what it can be compared to now. After he stabilized his mind and gritted his teeth, the impact of this pain on him finally weakened a little, and he no longer screamed. However, the gritted teeth also indicated that he was now suffering from a huge pain. After calming down, Wang Ling finally had some thoughts and carefully felt the changes in his right hand. He felt the pain before, as if his hand bones were being broken, but now that he felt it carefully, he discovered that his hand bones were not broken, but there seemed to be something on the surface that was forcibly reforming it. The pain that made Wang Ling scream before was due to this transformation. After learning about this situation, Wang Ling finally calmed down. Since it was a transformation, there should be nothing wrong with the enhancement of the King of Soldiers level. After he endured the pain, time passed minute by minute. After enduring it for nearly 5 minutes, the transformation was finally over, and the pain gradually disappeared. The strengthening of the Soldier King level is now complete. But when Wang Ling recalled the pain just now, he still felt a little scared. The feeling was really uncomfortable, and sweat broke out all over his body. The stain on his uniform made him feel a little bit twisted. But Wang Ling didn't care about this. Instead, he shouted in his head, "Uncle Hey, what's going on? Why are you suffering so much from the enhanced Soldier King of the Magnetic Blast Infantry?" Uncle Hey laughed heartily, "It's normal to suffer. You have experienced basic strengthening and intermediate strengthening before, So you should be able to understand that if you want to gain strength and ability, you have to pay something. And this kind of efforts and gains are often directly proportional, and your Soldier King level enhancement this time will be of great benefit to you. Oh! After hearing this, Wang Ling was a little surprised. He took a few deep breaths and managed to calm down the dizziness in his head caused by the infusion of military experience. He raised his right hand and tried to see what the electromagnetic device had strengthened. Situation. However, under his observation, there seemed to be no changes in the electromagnetic device, as if there was no strengthening at all. Don't worry, think about which part of you suffers the most during strengthening, Uncle He reminded him unhurriedly. Wang Ling's eyes narrowed, and he thought of the bones of his right hand, and then started to disassemble the transmitter of the electromagnetic device, exposing his right hand. To the naked eye, there was no change in this right palm, but Wang Lin felt it carefully, and suddenly his eyes widened. As his mind moved, he saw those crackling electric lights filling the air from his palm. It came out and lingered between the 5 fingers, looking particularly gorgeous. This electromagnetic current is not very powerful, not even comparable to the levelless magnetic blast infantry. However, Wang Lin's eyes narrowed, and under the influence of his will, the electromagnetic current suddenly surged into the air. Under Wang Ling's control, it dispersed into multiple currents, which seemed to be dancing with the wind. The power of the electromagnetic current he released this time was no weaker than that of the 7-star ace. Wang Ling was a little frightened when he saw it. Moreover, this was the result of Wang Ling not urging him with all his strength. The strengthening of this 10-star Soldier King is actually terrifying to this extent. No wonder the pain during the previous transformation was so severe that even Wang Ling found it unbearable. Thank you to Sci-Fi for the book coin rewards, and thank you all for your monthly and recommended support. Thank you very much. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 207. The electric currents released by Wang Ling's right hand stayed in the air for a long time, and their shapes were constantly changing. Sometimes they combined into several thunder dragons and swayed, sometimes they gathered into a large electromagnetic current umbrella, and sometimes they rotated rapidly, combined into a tornado shape. Watching the changes in these electromagnetic currents, Wang Ling was extremely excited. He really made a lot of money from the King of Soldiers level enhancement this time. It not only enhanced its power, but also buried the electromagnetic device in his right hand in an alternatively modified form. The most important thing is that after gradually adapting to it, and with the help of the experience he had instilled before, Wang Ling's mastery of these electromagnetic currents has simply improved to a very flexible level. Although he is not as good as an arm, he is not bad at all. Where did it go? This kind of enhanced transformation is indeed a bit abnormal. Taking a few deep breaths, he suppressed the excitement in his heart. As Wang Ling's mind changed, the electromagnetic current that had been changing shapes unscrupulously also dissipated. Naturally, all the other members of the Wolf team saw the surge of electricity he was trying out on the 10-star Soldier King, and they were all a little shocked for a moment. Is this an ability that magnetic blast infantry should have? Manipulating the electromagnetic current to this extent is too abnormal. However, after coming back to their senses, this group of people also became happy. The captain became stronger, and their wolf team was naturally happy too. After he was happy, Sun Dehu asked with some worry, "Captain, are you okay?" Wang Ling actually felt a little tired, and he had received the experience of the 10-star Soldier King. Although his body could bear it, his mind was already a little dazed, which was a sign of being tired to a certain extent. However, the light of excitement in his eyes covered up all these fatigues, and Hale said without any regard for his identity, "Very good, very good." Sun Dehu was a little confused, but Wang Ling was fine, so he felt relieved. After Wang Ling's episode, the wolf squad returned to their respective positions and guarded their positions. Now, before they can relax, the last wave of Allied reinforcements, which is also the wave with the largest number of soldiers, is getting closer and closer to them. Having had previous combat experience, one can imagine what kind of battle there will be next. Thinking of the brutal battle they were about to face, this group of people felt a little strange in their hearts. It was not fear, but a sense of reluctance. Many people couldn't help but look at their comrades beside them. After the battle, they didn't know how long these comrades would survive or how many of them would die in the battle, so this glance might very well be the last. For passionate men like them on the battlefield, they especially cherish each other's company. Compared to them, Wang Ling gradually became relieved, with lightning flashing on his right hand and confidence in his eyes. Taking over the old blocking battle, with his presence, there may not necessarily be many casualties. I didn't expect that when the team was in the most difficult time, I would reach the level of the king of soldiers. Hey, this gift is really a timely help. Wang Ling looked at the large allied troops gradually emerging at the end of his sight, but he was indifferent. Smile. It has been more than a month since he was promoted to the 7-star ace. During this period, he resisted the Allied encirclement and suppression troops, annihilated the Allied raiding teams, and now he has exaggeratedly killed a large number of Allied forces. Army reinforcements. From 7 stars to 10 stars, the amount of experience required during this period is somewhat difficult for Wang Ling to estimate. However, after continuous fighting until now, he has accumulated enough experience and successfully advanced. In the current situation, if it had been in the past, Wang Ling might have had a headache, and his heart would have been even more painful. If all the reinforcements were really consumed, the wolf team would also be exhausted. However, as he successfully advanced to the 10-star soldier king, these difficulties were not so exaggerated in Wang Ling's eyes. The 7-star ace and the 10-star soldier king seem to be just a level improvement, but only Wang Ling, who has personally experienced this enhancement, knows how big the gap is between the two. It is simply a qualitative sublimation. And now these large allied reinforcements happen to be his sparring partners, helping him try out this change and this power. Under his gaze and expectation, the last wave of reinforcements finally gradually broke into Wang Ling's range. The queen of the 10-star soldiers, Wang Ling's range has also been lengthened a lot. Although it is not far enough to surpass the prism tank, it will not be too far away. But at the moment, Wang Ling was not in a hurry to open fire. Instead, he waited until the group of allied troops continued to get closer. Wang Ling gathered his concentration, stretched out his right hand, and let out a cold snort. A stream of powerful electromagnetic currents surged from his hand and out. In the past, Wang Ling, no matter how powerful he was, could only emit one electromagnetic current and let it connect freely. However, the current that surged out of his hand now was several parallel, and each one was quite thick, enough to as thick as Wang Ling's waist. The overall look is like an electromagnetic waterfall flowing horizontally, which is quite spectacular and gorgeous. But this spectacular scene was covered with a thick aura of death. Numerous electromagnetic currents collided with the pioneers at extremely fast speeds, and then, under the control of Wang Ling, quickly charged towards the surroundings. 20 soldiers and tanks were covered in the blink of an eye. But that's not all. For the enemy troops covering such a large area, these electromagnetic currents obviously still have sufficient power and continue to spread forward under Wang Ling's control. 20. 25. 30. 35. When the number of covered people was maintained at 35, the electromagnetic current finally slowed down. But Wang Ling gritted his teeth and shouted, "It's not enough, we can go further, continue." As his shouts came out, the electromagnetic current seemed to receive an influx of follow-up power and continued to surge forward, finally successfully covering a full 40 enemy troops. There are still a number of tanks and vehicles mixed in among them. If it is pure infantry, the number covered will probably continue to increase. But even so, this number is already very scary. And not only that, even if these electromagnetic fields spread to such a large area, Wang Ling still maintained control over them. In the past, Wang Ling could only fire one shot at a time, let it recharge, and then continue to fire the next shot and attack one after another. But now, Wang Ling has launched once, but he has always maintained it. There is no need to launch again and again. In such a large electromagnetic area, the enemy forces within it are subjected to powerful electromagnetic waves almost all the time. Attack, the health bar is shrinking like running water. Under the influence of this continuous current, all enemy troops covered in this electromagnetic area, whether they are infantry or tanks, all seem to be paralyzed by electricity, and their movement speeds are rapidly decreasing. It is extremely dangerous to begin with, but if the speed is limited by the current, these covered allies will simply become desperate. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 208. On this smoke-filled battlefield, two fronts were fighting fiercely. In one of them, the quartet's troops had gained an absolute advantage and had almost wiped out all the remaining guards. They were seizing the opportunity to push across the remaining buildings in the Orange Allied base. On the other side, it was even more lively. Both sides of the war were attacking and defending. The number of soldiers on the defending side was obviously much less than that on the attacking side. However, even a guard team of this size had an extremely powerful force. In terms of combat power, the person at the front even released a large-scale electromagnetic current, covering many enemy troops and slowing their advance to a great extent. At the same time, the destructive power of its current always acted on these targets, causing his health bar was gradually depleted. This front line is naturally Wang Ling's Wolf Squad and the last reinforcements of the Allies. And who else is playing with electromagnetic currents at the front besides Wang Ling, a madman? He first entered the 10-star Soldier King as a magnetic blast infantryman. After this attempt, the power and effect made even Wang Ling a little horrified. With this scale and destructive power, if there are no special enemy forces involved, it can be said that one is worth 100. Not only him, but even Sun Dehu and others were stunned. They knew that Wang Ling was very strong before, but they didn't know why Wang Ling suddenly became so perverted in such a short period of time. But after being stunned, this group of people gradually became enthusiastic again. I originally thought that this battle would involve all the strength of the Wolf Squad, but their captain's sudden outburst seemed to gradually reverse the situation. Indeed, Wang Ling now has the ability to turn the tide of the war. Those raging electromagnetic currents had a huge range and extremely destructive power. Just as they were marveling, all the Allied soldiers it touched had been electrocuted to death, and even the tanks were left with residual health. In the subsequent electromagnetic waves, under the influence, it burst quickly. A continuous electromagnetic attack killed a total of 40 enemy units. Suddenly, there was a vacancy in the lineup of reinforcements. The efficiency of this troop clearing was really amazing. But it was not over yet. The Allied reinforcements were still charging without fear of death. Wang Ling's second round of electromagnetic attack began. Once again, more than 30 enemy units were enveloped, and the speed was greatly slowed down. The health bar is also shrinking like water. Wang Ling observed that there were even 6 seals among them. If this kind of soldier is allowed to get close, not to mention the other infantry of the Wolf Squad, even Wang Ling may be killed instantly. But the premise is that they can survive. Wang Ling's special class has reduced the coverage area a little, and also wants to cover these 6 seals. He is specifically taking care of them. How can he give them a chance to get close? After being shrouded in electromagnetism, they were electrocuted to death before they could advance any further. Subsequently, other enemy units within the electromagnetic envelope were killed one after another, the tanks also exploded, and reinforcements died again. However, when he was about to launch the third round of electromagnetic attack, Wang Ling paused because he discovered from the electronic map that there were actually 4 light prism tanks in the rear area of this group of reinforcements. This kind of tank has a farther range than Wang Ling, and it also has the ability to attack in a line. 4 tanks can fire in a salvo. Not to mention that with the current lineup of the Wolf Squad, they may lose a large number of elite infantry. Even Wang Ling, all are dangerous. Thinking of this, Wang Ling gritted his teeth and shouted, "Apocalypse, come on, don't care about the others, blow up the light tank first." It is difficult for infantry to fight against the long-range prism tank, so naturally it has to be handed over to the Apocalypse tank with stronger armor. Although these 3 Apocalypse tanks do not have full health, it is still not a problem to withstand a few rays of light. After receiving the order, the Apocalypse tanks did not hesitate. The 3 elites came out together like a sharp sword, breaking into the large allied force without stopping, crushing them all the way, even if there were gray people passing by. The bear tank ignored the shells it fired, and after a brutal collision, it finally got close to the light prism tank, and started bombing without ceremony. The armor of the prism tank is inherently fragile, but the elite Apocalypse tank has the ability to instantly kill most tanks. Under the circumstances, these 4 prism tanks were unable to hold on for a few rounds and were killed. Exploded tried his best, but just before the explosion, he fired a ray of light at the Apocalypse tank. But this kind of power is somewhat insignificant to Tiankai. After the mission was completed, these elite Apocalypse vehicles did not return. Instead, they stationed themselves at that place and opened fire on the Allied forces in all directions. The rumbling explosion was so violent that all the Allied forces could not withstand it. This area soon became a gap was cleared, and it was like a flower blooming in the center. During the charge of the Apocalypse tanks, these Allied troops finally got closer and rushed into the shooting range of the Wolf Squad. From then on, the last fierce battle began. The troops on both sides were shooting desperately. The raging fire snakes were like meteor showers surging horizontally. Every time they collided, they would bring up a touch of hot blood. The sound of submachine guns, machine guns, and various types of artillery shells echoed throughout the next period of time. The Allied forces are very powerful, but now, they have been defeated by the Wolf Squad. Wang Ling's continuous large-scale electromagnetic attacks, combined with the powerful firepower of the entire Wolf Squad, and the constant crushing force from behind. Apocalypse tanks, no matter how many reinforcements there are, they can't withstand such internal and external attacks. The total number is decreasing sharply at all times, and they were swallowed whole by the Wolf Squad after a short time of persistence. Observing from the electronic map, there were finally no other reinforcements in the rear. This massive rescue operation by the Allies failed to break through the Wolf Squad's defense line and ended in failure. It's gone. It's gone. Ha ha ha, those little brats' reinforcements are gone. We won, ha ha ha. Finally defended. How many reinforcements are there? I'm almost numb from the fighting. Is the fighting finally over? Ha ha ha, nonsense, of course the battle is over. Didn't you look on the electronic map? There are no reinforcements. We won. Okay, ha ha, brothers, I love you so much. After waiting and observing for a while, after seeing no more Allied reinforcements, the Wolf team finally knew the victory. At that moment, everyone was beaming with joy, laughing very wildly. However, smiling and laughing, some people in this group of people fell down one after another. Don't get me wrong, it's not that I failed, it's that I was too tired. They have endured successive battles for so long in the face of artillery fire and life and death. The reason why they can persevere is entirely due to their persistence and tenacity. Now that the blocking war is over, this obsession has finally been let go. This group of humans has been overworked, and many of them can no longer stand. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 209. After winning the blocking battle, the members of the wolf team also felt intense fatigue after being excited. Many people could no longer hold on and sat down on the ground or fell down directly. Those who could still stand were slightly a little tired. Trembling. They were not only exhausted physically, but also mentally exhausted from the continuous battles. It was estimated that if the Allies had another 1 or 2 waves of charges, this group of people might collapse. However, even though they were tired, they did not hide their excitement. Many people were laughing wildly even when they fell to the ground. But there were also some people who smiled and then fell silent, and there were even some tears in the corners of their eyes. Many of the comrades who had known each other for a long time lost their lives in this blocking battle. Of course, they were not the only ones who were tired. Wang Ling was also very tired. After the battle was over and out of the tense fighting state, Wang Ling's tight strings finally relaxed, and he immediately felt dizzy in his head. The body felt weak for a while. But these days, Wang Ling has tempered his will to a point beyond the reach of ordinary people. He just gritted his teeth and persisted for life. He took a few heavy breaths, turned around and looked at the members of the wolf team behind him, and couldn't help but feel relieved for a while. But while he was happy, he also felt a little distressed. Big Tiger. Hey, Captain. Write down the names of all the brothers who died. When you have the opportunity in the future, set up a hero monument. They are all heroes of our wolf team. Yes. Coalition Base Command Post. The operation planned by Chen Tong was approved by the command post. In such a large-scale battle, there will inevitably be some tension in the command post, whether it is the Commander-in-Chief, Major General Li Wiki, his deputies, Colonel Zhao Pingwang and Luo Weisai. Colonel Qi and others were all staring at the map videos of the two fronts. As for the quartet force, the enemy's large forces had been moved away from the mountain earlier, leaving the interior empty and cutting off its power supply. The remaining guard strength was not enough to stop the quartet force, and the battle situation was not suspenseful. However, the blocking mission that the Wolf Squad was responsible for had always made them a little worried before. They also had a small glimpse of the number of Allied reinforcements, and some regretted that they only sent the Wolf Squad to perform this task. However, as time went on, although the Wolf Squad suffered huge losses, they fought more and more fiercely, annihilating all the invading Allied reinforcements one after another. The eyes of the commanders were a little bright. In the end, the Wolf Squad successfully blocked the last wave of reinforcements and defended the rear front of the quartet. These 3 people could not help but shout excitedly. Good. Pretty. Tisk, tisk, so many reinforcements, but they failed to break through the blockade of the Wolf Squad. This Wang Ling, this Wolf Squad, is really unexpected. Haha, yes, when I saw so many reinforcements before, I thought the Wolf Squad was in danger, but I didn't expect that the Wolf Squad was so capable of fighting. This firepower is probably not inferior to that of all the troops from all directions combined. Alright. TCH, stop bragging. The forces from all directions unite to attack, and the Wolf Squad may not be able to stop it. However, this time, the Wolf Squad really made me see a miracle. Yes, especially Wang Ling. When he faced the last wave of reinforcements, he seemed to have improved again. The terror of the electric current made my scalp numb. I'm afraid the Allies would want to cry if they caught up with such a pervert. No tears. Major General Li Wiki listened to the discussion between the two of them, but he also laughed heartily. Yes, this battle was fought beautifully. Although the quartet force was the main attack, their difficulty was not as high as that of the Wolf team. Much smaller. It can be said that most of the hope for winning this battle lies with the Wolf team. And in the end, the wolf team did not disappoint us. After hearing this, King Xiaoping and Rovsky also smiled and nodded. No matter Chen Tong or Wang Ling, they were all soldiers of their base. They completed a battle of this scale together and won a great victory. Their faces there is light too. With the quartet, it's almost time to end the battle. Once the Orange Allied base is destroyed, there will be only 2 Allied bases left on the battlefield. This battle is secured. As Major General Li Wiki said, after Wang Ling's wolf squad ended the battle among the quartet troops had almost come to an end. Several crazy squads were desperately fighting to bomb the remaining Allied buildings and attack the buildings. The working infantrymen exposed after the explosion pursued and beat them fiercely, refusing to let go of any of them. Under this madness, the remaining buildings in the Allied base were quickly disappearing. In the end, only a bare command post was left, surrounded by large armies of troops from all directions. As for the Allied command post, the remaining 3 captains on the scene, to be honest, all wanted to occupy it, but the last experience was still vivid in their minds. The Allied forces would rather blow up the command post than use their technology. Give it to the coalition forces. Knowing their urinary nature, the quartet troops simply stopped trying to occupy it. After the siege, the 3 captains stepped forward and jointly gave the order. The quartet troops opened fire together, blowing up the entire command post almost instantly. Flat. At this point, the Orange Allied base has officially become a thing of the past, and the battle between the 4 forces finally ended with a complete victory. Seeing the flying debris of the command post, all the soldiers on the scene became excited, raised their firearms repeatedly, and shouted loudly. After waiting for Xi to celebrate for a while, the captains calmed down a little. Hu Ben was the first to smile. The Allied base is not as scary as imagined. Under the attack of our joint forces, it is impossible to withstand it. Sun Chiming let out a long sigh. Yes. It's Lao Dong, this bastard. Why are you in such a hurry? After such a long period of crazy fighting and the successful bulldozing of the entire base, Sun Chiming's anger finally subsided. However, after all, they have been old comrades for many years. Even if Sun Chiming looks at him with open eyes, he will inevitably feel a little annoyed and the corners of his eyes will turn slightly red. Hu Ben was embarrassed and stepped forward to pat Sun Chiming, wanting to comfort him, but he realized that he had no way to speak, so he simply shook his head. Silence was better than sound at this time. Chen Tong was the calmest. After withdrawing from combat readiness, he made it clear, don't be too arrogant. The Allies are not as unbearable as you think. If we can attack smoothly, why don't we lead the large troops away in advance? With these large troops now, we may not be so successful. The combined firepower of the Allied forces is quite fierce. Upon hearing this, Sun Chiming took a few breaths, relieved some of his resentment, and said matter-of-factly, yes, this is a fact. The 3 Allied bases are united. If one side is in trouble, 2 sides will support it. If it weren't for the large troops being mobilized away from the mountain, and Captain Wang's wolf squad is in the rear to help us resist. Once the reinforcements arrive, our troops from all directions will also suffer. So, Captain Wang takes the greatest credit for this battle. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 210. This attack plan was planned and directed by Chen Tong. In front of Chen Tong, saying that Wang Ling played the most important role would inevitably be a bit disrespectful to Chen Tong. However, although Chen Tong was arrogant, he was not an unreasonable person. Knowing this truth, he nodded and praised, yes, I had time to check the size of the Allied reinforcements during the attack. Before, it was my little looking at the number of these reinforcements. The pressure faced by the Wolf Squad is much greater than that of us. We can safely attack the Allied base here thanks to the Wolf Squad helping us block the enemy forces in the rear. Therefore, The outcome of this battle, the first achievement, should belong to the wolf team. Others also nodded. When they attacked this allied base, the base was already empty inside, but even so, they paid a heavy price, not to mention the wolf squad that blocked the large forces of the three allied bases. Already among them, they can easily compare the difficulty. Okay, the battle is over, it's time for us to go back and join Captain Wang Ling. After the battle ended, the troops from all directions did not stay at the front any longer. With a wave of Chen Tong's hand, they all retreated. After the large troops withdrew, the originally majestic allied base was in a mess. Although all the corpses and wreckage have gradually disappeared, the ferocious potholes on the ground and the smoke everywhere tell the story of the battles that took place here before. The march of a large force is naturally relatively slow, and now that the battle is over, the Allies have temporarily lost the power to counterattack. The four forces seemed a bit unhurried when they retreated. After nearly 2 hours of trekking, the large force finally arrived at the Wolf team's defense point and successfully merged with Wang Ling. The current Wolf squad was exhausted after repeated battles. Many officers and soldiers, including Wang Ling, were resting. However, as troops from all directions arrived, this group of people stood up again and walked past each other. Military salute. After putting down his hand, Wang Ling said with a smile, "Congratulations, you successfully knocked down the Allied base. Now, there are only 2 Allied bases left on the battlefield. With the strength of the Allied forces, the outcome of the battlefield here is already foreseeable. Hey, brother Wang Ling, don't be humble. If you hadn't blocked the Allied reinforcements, we wouldn't have been able to knock down the Allied base. This time we have to thank you," Hu Ben replied with a smile. Others nodded in agreement. Wang Ling is not modest at all. After all, this is a fact. The previous battles of the Wolf team were too fierce. Recalling the tragic battle before, Wang Ling couldn't help but feel a little emotional now. After sighing, Wang Ling also glanced at the troops from all directions. In this attack, the troops from all directions also suffered a lot of losses. After all, no matter how empty the Allied base is, it still has a combat effectiveness that cannot be underestimated. But after looking at it, Wang Ling noticed something was wrong. Where is Captain Dongming of the Firefox team? Why can't he be seen? When Dongming was mentioned, Sun Chiming's expression became a little gloomy again. Old Dong, he died. After hearing the news, Wang Ling was speechless for a while. The energy of the Wolf squad was limited. They had tried their best to block the Allied reinforcements in this battle. They really couldn't take care of the troops from all directions. Wang Ling was a little confused after Dongming's death, but in the end he could only a sigh of relief. When Dongming died, Sun Chiming was the craziest, but now that the battle is over, he is the first to look away. He took a deep breath and said with a wry smile, "There is no way. In the war years, perhaps dying on the battlefield is the final fate of our group of soldiers." Old Dong just took one step ahead and went to the place that belonged to him. The place. Nonsense. However, as soon as Sun Chiming finished speaking, Hu Ben started to scold him, "Stop talking nonsense. What kind of fate is this? If I can live, I won't die." This sentence was quite impolite, but it was this kind of words that made Sun Chiming, who was originally depressed, amused. He laughed a few times and said, yes, isn't it good to live? If you want to die, let the Allies go die, let us live happily. After finishing speaking, the two guys glanced at each other, and then burst into laughter again. During this process, Chen Tong didn't say anything. In the end, he just smiled and urged, "The battle is over. It's almost time for us to go back." As he spoke, he was about to order the troops to retreat. But leave? We've already fought here, why are you leaving so quickly? Wang Ling sneered, with a fierce look in his eyes. This kind of look shocked Chen Tong. Captain Wang Ling, what do you want to do? Wang Ling raised the corner of his mouth and revealed an intriguing and dangerous arc. Wolf Squad has fought for so long and sacrificed so many brothers. I can't let them sacrifice in vain. Now, aren't there 2 allied bases? You. After hearing this, Chen Tong's expression suddenly changed. Are you kidding me? Hu Ben also heard what Wang Ling meant, with a surprised expression on his face. Brother Wang Ling, you don't want to destroy another allied base, do you? Wang Ling nodded slightly. That's exactly what I meant. Sun Chiming was in a daze. Man, we have just finished the battle, and we are going to attack the allied base. Isn't it too forced? Wang Ling sneered and said, I didn't say we would attack together, but the Wolf Squad was going to go. Before, the Wolf Squad served as your guard and helped you clear the obstacles in the rear. Now, it's time to change your identities. You guys can help if I keep an eye on the green allied base. I will be sure to destroy the blue allied base. Wang Ling really acted out of common sense and was too risky. As soon as this thought appeared, Chen Tong and the others were speechless for a while, not knowing how to reply. But Wang Ling didn't wait for their reply. Instead, he contacted them by radio. Brother Zhao, can you hear me? King Xiaoping immediately replied, I can hear it. Wang Ling, you did a really good job this time. Wang Ling chuckled, with a sharp look on his face. The battle is not over yet, we have to continue to wipe out another allied base. This said straight to the point, making the unprepared King Xiaoping choke. Then, Rovitsky's voice came from the radio, Wang Ling, you are going to heaven as soon as you have a victory. With your current state, if you attack the allied base again, can you bear the consequences? Wang Ling was not to be outdone. We are in a bad state now, but the allies are not feeling well either. During these times, the Wolf Squad has almost destroyed most of the troops in the remaining 2 allied bases. Now these 2 allied bases we are already feeling empty inside. This is a good opportunity to pursue and fight fiercely. After missing this opportunity, the allies will soon recover their strength and be able to continue the stalemate with us for a long time. When the time comes to attack again, our casualties will be the number will only get bigger.